This is Signal and Noise, bringing clarity to data, tech, and AI.
Welcome, Mark Zagorski, to Signal and Noise. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Brett. Good to be here. Hi, Rio.
Good to see you.
So for those that don't know Mark, Mark and I actually go way back to the beginnings of my career in AdTech at a little company called eXelate, and sort of traversed the data marketplace, data management platform worlds before being purchased by Nielsen and launching the Nielsen Marketing Cloud. And then Mark did a whole bunch of terrific things. People probably know him as the CEO of DoubleVerify. But in your own words, Mark, I'd love to have you share with our audience a little bit about your trajectory in MarTech, AdTech, and kind of what brought you to your current 5-year plus stint, right, at DoubleVerify.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I've been swimming around in this internet ad pool since 1997, where I was with Modem Media, one of the first digital ad agencies. Some folks who are long in the tooth may remember that crew, and and most recently sold eXelate to Nielsen, then ran a company called Telaria, a small public company, which we merged with Rubicon to create Magnite.
And formerly Tremor Video, right?
Formerly Tremor Video, yep.
Yeah.
It was Tremor. We sold off the buy side and just focused on sell side, turned that to Telaria. Telaria merged with Ruby, became Magnite, and then I turned that over to Mr. Michael Barrett, who's done an amazing job with that business. And then most recently, in the last 5 years, IPO'd DoubleVerify, and that's where we are today. So it's been a really great kind of decade or so of selling companies, merging companies, and now IPOing companies.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, your reputation definitely precedes you, Mark. We're thrilled to have you on the show, and welcome everyone back to Signal and Noise. So again, this is Rio Longacre here with my co-host Brett House, and as you can see, Mark Zagorski's on. We're going to talk into and dig into the state of ad verification, and I guess you could say Mark is really as CEO of DoubleVerify, he's right in the pilot seat, right? Mark, we're thrilled to have you here, and I just think this is such a very important topic, especially like looking at ad verification and how this relates to things in the age of AI, right? Mm-hmm. Anyone who's followed this space knows this has been it's been a lot going on this year. DV, I posted some really good Q2 results. Stock bumped quite a bit. Looking at the numbers here, is 21% revenue growth. Guidance went up, and the market noticed shares went way up. And I wish I had bought more stock before that. Trajectory looks good, but in a lot of ways, verification isn't just a victory lap. I mean, there's been a lot of, I think, questions in the industry about where things are going. A few weeks ago, we had a guest in our show, Dr. Augustine Fu, who many know he's been a sharp critic of brand safety tactics, not specifically of DoubleVerify, but just in general. There's been argument for him as well as for many publishers that some blunt keyword blocking can drain revenue from quality news and maybe even sometimes misreal fraud. So we want to address all these concerns, talk about them, and understand what DV is doing, where the changes are being made, and why DV is leading the pack, and how it relates to this recent good news. We'll also dig into some of the DoubleVerify's recent moves, including the Scibids AI acquisition, which I thought was really cool, and one of the, I think, a harbinger of a lot of the M&A activity we've seen recently. In addition to the auction time optimization and as well as Rockerbox for attribution. Yeah. And what these bets say about tying trust to outcomes and the whole age of outcomes thing. Think industry never sits still. Lots of change, a lot going on, especially with AI, and really a lot to talk about. So, welcome here. Buckle up, everyone, and let's dive in.
Yeah,
you really kept that narrow, Rio. We're really gonna keep
There's
this.
A broad set of topics.
I think we got 5 minutes, and we'll be.
Well, you did say anything was good.
You said you were available until 5 p.m. Eastern, right? So you guys have been. I've heard you say the word referee, right? And you and I, having had some stints at Nielsen, you certainly know what that sort of neutral arbiter role is. Yeah. As and I love that analogy for DV. Where do you draw the line between sort of neutral arbiter and sort of business partner with brand clients, with agency clients, without compromising your independence as an arbiter?
Yeah, I mean, look, we have one main constituency who we serve, and that is the advertiser, right? Over 90% of our revenue comes from advertisers. And our goal, and not our goal, our mission is to be an independent, partner to them to help them assess the quality and efficacy of their media placements, right? There are many platforms that do what we do, but they're also selling media, right? There are many buying and selling platforms that do what we do, but they have skin in the game, which is they have a vested interest in making sure that transaction happens. We don't.
Yep.
We have a vested interest in making sure that the data we provide the advertiser is accurate and helps them make the best decision possible. So, there is no line in which, we feel like we have to cross to be, independent or good. Like, we're already there. Like, that is our mission. If our advertisers don't trust us that we're doing the right thing, then they won't spend with us. And that is key. Our independence, the veracity of the data that we have, and our focus on ensuring that they are getting the right information to make the right decision is essential to who we are as a company and our value prop to anyone who works with us.
Well, results speak for themselves, that's for sure. Looking back to those outstanding results last quarter, Street noticed, stock bumped. What do you attribute some of this success to?
So, I mean, look, we started off the year saying this is a year of transition for us, and it still is. We are investing in solutions for both CTV and for social platforms because we believe, more and more dollars are flowing there and there's less and less transparency. So, we know that this year was going to be one in which there was going to be some variability, right? We started the year off saying that. We benefited from some active behavior that we had, not with new products, which are still being developed, but with kind of selling our vision to new customers and upselling those solutions to our current customers as well. We had some really strong strategic wins over the last several quarters. Microsoft, Kenvue, Charter, all of these companies, came to start working with DV, and we were able to upsell them some, new solutions. So we benefited from our focus on, selling the vision of where we're heading as a business, bringing new customers into the fold, and taking advantage of some of the growth opportunities in upselling products that have arguably been around for a while, but have not had penetration with some of these new customers that we were just onboarded. So we had a good first half of the year. I think we will continue to show strong growth, based on the evolution of our solutions into other venues over the next several quarters as well.
I've heard you talk a lot about moving from just brand safety, protection, and verification into more performance outcomes, really looking at things more holistically. What solutions are you bringing, or problems you think you're solving for CMOs? And you mentioned the brands themselves that maybe even weren't solvable a few years ago.
Yeah. So, the evolution from us being what is classically known as kind of a protection business to one that also kind of has performance as part of its mission is not as big of a stretch, I think, as some might believe. We started off by saying, we're going to help you take garbage out of the system, right? Ads that aren't viewable, fraud, ads that show up in content or context that's not aligned with who you are as a brand.
Yeah, it's an efficiency play.
Yeah, when you take garbage out of the system, what's left is going to perform better, right? Yeah. And I think that's the nature of who we've always been as a business. Now, fast forward to today, we're helping you find media quality, but with the addition of Scibids, we're helping you find that media quality, that impression cheaper, right? And now with the addition of Rockerbox, we're going to help you prove that impression, or understand whether that impression actually drove a sale, right? So if you think about it, it's the natural evolution of quality data, finding quality environments, finding that quality environment cheaper, and then proving that quality environment or that impression actually drove a sale. So it's an expansion of our core, but we've always focused on efficiency, pulling garbage out of the system, and helping what's left work better.
Scibids, that was an interesting acquisition. I figure we could jump ahead to some of the questions we had about that, Rio. Those are custom bidding models,
Yep.
right? Based on signals like viewability and attention and IVT and other.
Yeah, I feel I almost felt like that acquisition kicked off like the acquisition. Like we've seen a lot of them the last few, let's say year or so, especially in the AI space. I thought that was like a harbinger, right? What you like. Not a lot of people predicted it. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your rationale for making that move.
Yeah, I'll be direct. Like the initial rationale for that acquisition was more defensive than offensive. And what we saw was, we were in the world of pre-bid inventory being very binary. It was either viewable or not viewable. It was either brand safe or not safe. It was either fraud or not fraud. And we had this binary kind of take on how our solutions were implemented. And what we started theorizing is, well, viewability is binary, but when you start looking at the way IAB defines it and how other advertisers are defining it, there is actually a scale of viewability. And what the IAB has decided is kind of arbitrary, right? Anyone in the media knows it's kind of like there's this line of like, hey, the IAB says this is viewable or not viewable. And I think some of our customers started feeling the same way, not around things like fraud or brand safety, but things like suitability and viewability, where there's a spectrum of, hey, you know what, if I could get this ad significantly cheaper and it actually has ROI against it, maybe I'm willing to not look at viewability as binary, right? Maybe an ad that didn't meet the binary definition of viewability actually still displayed long enough for someone to click on it so that it actually did do something. Yeah. And if I can get that super cheap, then why wouldn't I buy it? So we started thinking is this the way the world is going to go? Is all buying just going to be more on a spectrum, more on versus binary? And that was the initial thesis behind Scibids, which is like, let's protect what we have.
Yeah, and it also moves you a little bit into the activation space, and you have this auction time optimization, which I think it reminds me a little bit, Rio, of our conversation with Lou Pascalis, who was, as you can imagine, Mark, was a fascinating conversation. And he talked about the criticality of sort of signal, whether you're on the publisher side or the brand side, like harnessing and capturing the signal. Forget about just first-party data. We're talking about third-party data signal. And it is critical for success, for relevance, for content optimization, ad optimization, auction, real-time optimization. Is that really the goal, is to increase the amount of signal that you're capturing?
I think it's to not to increase the amount of signal, but to increase the usability of our signals in more applications. And I mentioned viewability as one, but for the vast majority of customers of Scibids, they're using their own signals. Right? Yeah. So whether it's someone like Diageo who has their own KPIs. The idea behind Scibids, it's a custom KPI engine, right? And it builds an algo based on whatever that advertiser wants to focus on. It could be a DV metric like attention, but it could be entirely their own metric. It could be sales. It could be clicks. It could be anything. It could be viewability. But the idea there is
so that algorithm allows you to suck in data from the client, whether it's their own first-party data or part of their data ecosystem, which could be third-party data partners through a clean room type of thing. So you can bring all that in there and then customize to the variables that are driving the most impact.
Is that being combined as well with DV's signals? I mean, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, and if you kind of play this out, think about Rockerbox now. Now we have Rockerbox, which is pulling in attribution signals and all kinds of other transactional data that can also be optimized against. So you're right. There's accumulation of more signal that we're getting through Rockerbox, and then there's the application of that signal in more places through Scibids. And it's cool. So I think it makes a really powerful package for DV to talk to customers around.
And it sounds like it's a real diversification play. It's like, don't limit your risk in terms of where you played and how you're being defined in market today, like competing against IAS, and broaden the scope of what your business actually does to support brand efficacy and effectiveness, right?
Yeah, look, I think, Rio, you mentioned earlier, it's kind of like, what problems are you trying to solve? And I think, CMOs and advertisers are always trying to solve the quality problem, and they're trying to solve the performance problem. Right? Is my media in the right place so that I can protect my brand, and does it actually work? And if they can do that through a single platform and a single customer relationship, they'd much rather do that than work with 15 other different places. We also occupy a pretty unique spot in the fact that we're not just open web, right? We're not just CTV or just social. We see data and transactions across open web, across mobile app, across social, across CTV, across audio. And we do so, and the reason why we can be there is because we're agnostic and we're not competing against any of those guys. We don't compete against Meta. We don't compete against Netflix. We don't compete against Trade Desk. And that puts us in a really unique and agnostic position.
Are these acquisitions changing who you're selling to a certain extent, like agency versus brand, CMO? I mean, has it changed that dialogue at all?
I think it's brought more folks into the discussion, right? So
more functional folks from different areas.
When you start talking about optimization, now you're pulling traders in and media buyers in. Brand safety in many cases was a discussion sometimes at the CMO level, sometimes at the media level, and in some cases they actually had specific brand safety leads, right? The brands had their own brand safety folks. This has brought in performance folks, analytics folks.
Yep. Which changes the nature of the conversation too, right? You have to get a lot more technical, a lot faster with those data science gurus that are running.
A lot more technical, but also a lot more bottom line driven. Too.
Yeah.
Show me what you're going to save me. Show me what results you can help prove. And I think that's, I think that's good. We want to have those discussions with advertisers because, and we've said this before, it's kind of like you grudgingly pay for insurance. I'm sure neither of you.
I think I've heard you mention that before in public too.
Neither of you love paying for insurance. No one does. But you love paying for performance. This is great. I want to work with you. I want that to happen. So
you love when the insurance actually kicks in to support you in a time of need.
Yeah, it's good when it works, but when it's not, why am I paying
this amount? Where's the value of this? Yeah. So for our audience, because we defined Scibids for the audience for Rockerbox, and this is sort of close to heart for probably the last 5 to 7 years of my life at New Star TransUnion. Yeah. Heavy duty MTA. We did obviously some of that in MMM and some of that at Nielsen. With Visual IQ, we were commercializing that as part of the Nielsen Marketing Cloud, as well as their home-built CPG MTA solution. But just for the audience, and tell me if I'm wrong, Mark, Rockerbox is sort of a consolidated solution. It combines the capabilities of MTA, classical multi-touch attribution, and marketing mix modeling, and incrementality testing, right? Yes. To give you sort of a single source of truth. Now, that's kind of a positioning statement, and I apologize for that, but can you break that down for the audience in terms of the benefit? Because I know the full capabilities of these types, and they can get very heavy and very deeply algorithmic and very predictive and complex and hard to implement. Can you kind of talk us how Rockerbox sells into brands and agencies, and how do you see it in the ecosystem compared with both the open source models the Meridians and the Robins from Meta, as well as the big players like TransUnion and IRI and there's a bunch of players in that space, Econometrics. And
it's interesting too, Brett. You bring this up, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it, Mark. Because I felt like MMTA attribution in general, lots of questions about it. These are coming up, and are people gaming attribution? And with signal loss, is there a future for MTA? And I saw a lot of brands start to really shift focus to more MMM, right? Maybe we should, which I think had kind of fallen off for a while, right? So I thought that was kind of refreshing. And I think end of last year, beginning of this year, incrementality, questions about it for retail media. How do we do this? We did an episode on it on another podcast a few months ago, just talking about what is it, right? So, definitely an important topic. Love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, look, there is no lack of complexity in our space, and once anyone feels like they get their arms around it, we just throw another thing in there and make it more confusing for advertisers. Yeah. I mean, we're not even talking about large language model fueled chat bots, and when they get ad supported, how we're going to figure out how we attribute things to them.
Yeah, when, not if, right? When they get ad supported.
They will all be ad supported. You can mark this. There is no doubt in my mind they will be ad supported, just like all CTV is.
Well, Perplexity just lost their head of ads, right? I think Taz Patel left, which is, I think it says more about the chaos there than and their goals. So
yeah, but winding back to Rockerbox, I think you're exactly right that their focus and our focus is trying to ensure that we can pull enough signals and run the right types of modeling that helps tie the exposure to the outcome, and do so in a way that is proprietary, unique to them, clear, and actually focuses on what the advertiser is interested in, right? And I think that is unique to Rockerbox, where I think the connective tissue starts to make sense, and this is something which is pretty. This is a data point which I actually just heard recently, and it makes total sense. Is that we found that almost 30% of ads that were being considered as being driving attribution were actually not viewable, right? So exposure and credit, i.e. cookie bombing from that.
Oh yeah. And they do the same thing in mobile, like mobile device bombing, basically.
Was driving attribution. So to me that shows like, hey, there's a desperate need to start with quality data, i.e. stuff that DV can assess as viewable or not fraud, and pull that into the model as well, so that we can make what Rockerbox is doing even better than anybody else out there, because we're doing that kind of that filtering first. So Rockerbox sells directly to customers. They don't sell to agencies. They sell directly to mostly performance-driven advertisers. So guys,
that's interesting. So, and performance-driven advertisers, like, it doesn't matter the vertical necessarily. Oh, there's some verticals are more performance-driven than others. Is it more mid-market
more lower funnel?
Lower funnel. So retailers, like Lowe's Hotels,
DTC,
Urban Outfitters, Warby Parker, Weight Watchers, people that are really driving online transactions. That's kind of their specialty, is that because they've been able to really come up with a model that shows true ROI on spend, and then obviously apply that to the media mix model, like where we can attribute revenue or attribute sales to this. Now this is where you should be shifting your dollars.
Yeah, exactly. Strategic budget allocation changes and shifts. Have you? And I'd be interested to hear, because one of the challenges that we certainly faced at Newstar was there was always a data hygiene and data unification issue, especially with the big brands. Like we always talked about how GM, who is a major client of ours, had 60 different data warehouses. So like the first 6 months of our contract with an MTA, MMM sort of hybrid was combining that data, getting that cleansed and enriched, et cetera, before you could actually begin starting to kind of power the models and getting more predictive and prescriptive in your... and so implementation times could go for 10 months, a year, before they even see any results, outputs. I mean, does Rockerbox struggle with that, or is it a different approach?
I mean, look, from my perspective, it is a new universe, right? Because I'm coming from implementations that are much faster, much lighter. We control the engagements in many ways, and how we're like pulling data in from third parties. It's based on just ad impression data, right?
Yeah.
So, so that yes, the ramp time is still considerably longer for a Rockerbox customer than it would be for like a straight DV verification customer. And the complexities of pulling that data in are not small. I mean, but I do feel like this is a crew that's been around for a long time. They're digital first folks. These are not like legacy MMM guys from,
from the old Nielsen days. They got rid of that business,
Axiom days, so they're pretty adept, and they know, and most of the customers that they're working with are digital first and digital transaction first companies, right? So the data that they're pulling in is not as heavyweight as maybe what
something like a Bank of America or a
GM is like. GM is looking at autos. They don't have online transactions per se. Urban Outfitters and Warby Parker and a lot of these other folks, I mean, like a vast majority of their transactions are online. So the lift isn't as heavy, and I think it has to do with the kind of customers we've targeted as well.
Yeah, plus GM, they have like the three tiers. It's a global company, right? They have dozens of agencies. I mean, I've worked in those big MMM projects. They could take 6 months to a year just gathering the data, aggregating it, building the models. I agree, really not easy. And maybe AI could speed some of that up, right? In terms of the data collection, normalization, et cetera. On the subject of AI, I'd love to hear, I don't know how much you can share, Mark, but love to find out about how is like any interesting things in a roadmap related to this. There's been a lot of buzz about agentic AI recently. Love to hear whatever you're able to share about that.
Yeah, look, AI is changing operations. It's changing our product road mapping, and it's changing the environment where our customers are sending ads. Like, starting from the tail end there, we know there's so much AI slop in the open web.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time.
It's insane. We just published a paper on kind of AI generated recipe sites, of which like vast majority of recipe sites now are all AI generated by creators and moms who are also we find as they were telemarketing pictures from a Russian website. So the content environment has become really kind of
awash with a lot of crap, right?
A lot of crap. And we've had customer engagements who've come to us and said, and like this won't last, but they said, we don't want to be around any AI generated content.
Yeah.
And we're like,
good luck with that.
Yeah, so good luck with that.
We're like, you're in finance, and by the way, 90% of finance articles are AI generated. So that being said, but like there is something like we are detecting, for example, deep fakes in political content, right? That is something that advertisers don't want to be around. So it's created a more
Donald Trump was supposedly dead like a couple days ago. Right? That was a deep fake. That was a big...
I don't know. AI's, for all the good things AI is doing, it's doing a lot of bad.
Well, and it's interesting, Mark. We did an analysis. It was at Krepsik and I, and he presented this in a webinar that we just did on sort of the content universe and how that landscape has changed when you talk about UGC and how in today's world, 50% of all content that's produced is sort of short form UGC based content, which has much lower CPMs, different ad models, right? It's the creator economy. 30% is sort of your Hollywood economy, like produced original content that we watch on Netflix and the like. And then the 20% that hasn't changed in like 20 years is basically live events in news, like live sports and live events. And so that to my, that UGC bucket, which was a surprise to me, 50%, and this was 10% 8 years ago, 9 years ago. Is going to be just a complete sea change in how we advertise against that content, right? Because it's so voluminous. There's so much of it. So how do you look at that? And this question, I'm just sort of top of my head. How do you think about, managing sort of verification, efficiency spend against this just robust content source that's only going to grow in volume?
So we've already encountered this. So you mentioned short form video, and short form video has exploded. So we work with TikTok, we work with Reels, we work with Shorts, we verify for suitability and safety and content, context, and all of that stuff. And the shorter answer is we used AI to analyze AI. So we do predictive modeling, for example, on short form video. So rather than look at every frame of a video to determine what happens, we look at one frame per second, and we determine that we predict what will happen in the next 30 frames that happen in that second of HD video, right? So we're using AI to do predictive modeling. We're using AI to do labeling now. And we've always used large language models to analyze context, but a lot of those have been initially fed by what we call labelers, people, right?
Yeah.
Feed the models. Now we're using AI to actually do the labeling as well. So, which has increased our scalability, has increased our speed to contextualize content. So, we're just using the same tools that people are using to create content to analyze content as well.
Yeah, and it's all about like applying metadata in a sense to that content to label it, taxonomize it, orient it, right? It's interesting because, and you've been talking about the big move towards CTV and social media and social video and digital video. We did some analysis that showed, of the by 2028, we're going to have about a $500 billion advertising ecosystem. 220 billion of that is video driven, right? And 50 billion is CTV. About these are approximates. I mean, you can look at eMarketer.
By 2028, that's what they're saying, Brett?
Yeah, by 2028, and 120 billion is going to be social video and digital video, which is the your guy. Is your guy in college now?
Yeah, he just started. Started.
Mine did too, because we used to talk about our boys and the skiing adventures they went on.
Yes.
Where'd he go? Just off the top.
NYU Film School.
Nice. Well, they need. Yeah, Miles, my son's in Syracuse Film School.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, we'll have to compare notes offline. Yeah. But
we'll compare our unemployed children's notes so they don't have jobs because film is dead and everything's AI.
I'm like, move to AI, move to digital video. But yeah, so it sounds like you guys are taking that challenge of digital video and just the sheer growth of that, right? My point being with our boys, they're on that. I bet they're on that 6 hours a day watching short form video on TikTok. It's incredible the behavioral changes you see in the youth around us.
The youths. Yeah, no, it is. And again, whoa. Okay, I lost my light here. Hold on. I have to stand up, Brett.
Yeah, the motion sensor has to pick you up again. Yeah.
Come on, give me something here. There we go.
And that's the Beastie Boys picture in the back. It's not Backstreet Boys, which Brett thought it was earlier. Just so we're clear.
He was still out of focus, guys. I know the Beastie Boys.
It's a seed change for sure. Engagement is all over the place now with regard to how consumers are being engaged and advertisers. It's an interesting universe for an advertiser to be in. We work with a ton of CPG advertisers, right? And they've always been the sight, sound, and motion people because we need to create a connection to a brand. CPG is all about branding. And how do you do that? 30 seconds was hard enough. How do you do that now in 5, in which someone's going like this?
Yep.
So I think the rise of influencers, the rise of trying to break through in these short form video universes is really interesting, but also the fact that you are now, at least when I used to run a commercial in daytime, I knew that if I was going to be on during soap operas, I knew what the content was. Felt fairly confident that I knew what was going to happen, and if something bad happened, then someone at the network could hear about it. Today it's like I have to be in short form. I have to be in these social media environments. And what I don't want to have happen is have my ad show up in between 2 terrible posts about something that's really uncomfortable for me to be around, right? But there's no other place for me to be. And that's the challenge, right? Yeah. I have to be there to sell product because that's where my audience is.
Well, Mark, looking at responsible media like UGC versus news organizations, how would you describe your role in helping brands navigate that? Because I know it's challenging for them, right? They need to be in certain places, but you look at some of the content that gets uploaded to social, some of it's pretty horrific, right? I mean, I go to a lot of AdTech is on X. I'm there all the time, and you have to curate your feed in order to just not go crazy sometimes, right? How would you describe your role in helping brands navigate this, pick where to go, yet at the same time support credible and responsible journalism and avoid disinfo? How would you describe that? Yeah,
I mean, look, the one thing that we are not in the business of is kind of directing ad spend anywhere. We are there to be the advertiser's partner and to help them navigate the places where they want to be. You mentioned news, and I think it's a place where we still just philosophically, as a company and personally, feel like it's important for news to thrive. It's important for there to be quality news across the spectrum, and for that content to be easily accessible and for it to be monetizable by advertisers. Advertisers want to be there. So we launched the News Accelerator last year to help publishers. We work with big publishers. I mean, we work with folks like News Corp, and Fox and Reuters and New York Times and the Post. We work with a lot of big publishers, and the goal of that News Accelerator was to help them better understand how they can package their content, to help communicate and educate advertisers on the quality and importance of news, and to help advance our tools, the technology that advertisers use to find their way to good content and make sure, not good being appropriate for them, and to stop using blunt tools like keyword blocking, to ensure
domain blocking,
to ensure that they're being more sophisticated. And there's a lot of noise around how terrible keyword blocking is and how it destroys news. I mean,
Lou Pascal's called it a roach motel, right? It's like they go in, it's not that, basically his whole point was, these keywords and these domains that you've blocked, these lists go in and they don't come out, right? And they're not dynamic, they're not
the lists are not curated or updated frequently.
They're not contextually predictive to say, hey, you might have blocked the Hillary Clinton keyword, but that's kind of irrelevant in today's ecosystem. She's a grandma in Scarsdale. How do you think about the nuances of that?
There's a couple places we play there. The first is we don't recommend any advertiser use keywords as a solo way of blocking content.
Yeah.
Right. We've got categorization tools that are, we have hundreds of suitability categories with multiple levels of sensitivity that are very sophisticated, that look at things like sentiment. That's what we promote, right? We should be using those tools. Keywords, in conjunction with that, keywords right now represent 0.2% of all the blocking that occurs.
Oh, really? 0.2%. Wow.
0.2% of all the blocked impressions are blocked by keywords is 2.2%. So that aside, even with keywords, what we've done is we've built new tools to allow keywords lists to advertisers to be alerted when keywords are stale and not have been around too long, make it more seamless and easy for them to update and upload keyword block lists if they want to do that.
Can that be automated through some sort of AI decisioning engine?
We have automated alerts. We have automated, we're automating expiration periods. We're automating all of those things for advertisers. This really comes down to advertiser preference. We can do everything from expire the keywords to ensure that those keyword lists are not stale and alerting them to that, to enthusiastically, telling them you should not be using keywords on their own. You should be using sentiment analysis. You should be using our other tools. It really comes down to the advertiser and ensuring that they're the ones who are turning the knobs. We can't turn the knobs.
Yeah, you can't control what they're doing. You can't make them more sophisticated.
Down that road. And look, there's a reason why we launched the News Accelerator, and it was because we don't want poor behavior to actually impair news growth. It's not a good thing. That's not why
it impairs the open web, right?
And look, the reality of it is that without tools like ours, advertisers just won't buy news at all. That is the truth here. And the reality is they don't need to buy it. There's an infinite amount of content. Advertisers don't need to buy content. Should they buy it? Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important for them to be there. And if they have tools that allow them to navigate around things that is more appropriate for them, they should leverage those tools. And that's what we want to promote, is the idea of you can use a scalpel or you can use a meat cleaver. We'd rather use a scalpel, and this is the way you use it.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about news publishers on this show, Brett, right? Which I think it's been good. Like Lou was great
with
last
Stephanie
episode.
Laser and Lou.
Yeah, with Steph Laser. And we have a great one with Jessica Hogue coming up from hers. But I think it's interesting how and I get it, complaints about keyword blocking and how it's impacted display. But I do think that there's a broader problem about the business of news publishing, and whether you go back to Craigslist or how that eviscerated classified ads, right? And how look at Google Meta's impact on siphoning traffic away. It's been a broad, I think, change of the business that they haven't responded very quickly to, with not a lot of easy answers. So I think blaming keyword blocking and in ad verification, brand safety is probably just I think it's missing the forest for the trees to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's a little, it is a little, maybe a red herring, right? That innovate or die. These publishers do have to innovate how they engage and attract, brand dollars, whether it's their content models, their advertising models, et cetera.
Yeah. No, it's a tough time to be a publisher, and we want to help advertisers better direct spend there. I mean, I think the existential crisis for large publishers right now, obviously, is AI chatbot summaries. I mean, we already know it's impacting publishers. So there needs to be a universe in which they can figure out how to monetize that as well. Otherwise, or create content that's unique, that isn't just, fact-based, snippets. It has to have a POV. Right. And again, I'm not a news person, so there are much better prognosticators here. But, I think the reason why I talked about recipe sites, the reason why recipe sites are AI generated is because they're just a list of facts.
Yeah.
Right. And
there is no perspective. There is no nuance or opinion or empathy.
Even the recipe sites are going to be summarized in a summary, and I won't even need to go to the AI generated recipe site. So, content needs a POV, and I think that's what will thrive and survive.
That's a good point. So you look at like Free Press; they're getting acquired by CBS for what, $200 million, right? It's just basically like
is that actually happening? Is that?
Yeah, it sounds like it is. As of today, I mean, it may not, but like I was reading that it's going to Barry Weiss's organization, right? Yeah. I mean, it's just basically like a bunch of it's a podcast combined with some great content that they've been publishing on Substack, right? And that's being acquired, right? Said that good quality content, people value it, people read it. I mean, so I think that proves there is a market for it, but it's probably, I think the format's just changing, right? And publishers need to embrace that, and I mean, I don't think that anyone knows what the future is going to look like, to your point, Mark, but I think that things are changing, and there is an appetite for good quality content that's made by humans.
Yeah. For sure.
So maybe a little bit of a pivot is would love your perspective, and you may not be able to say a ton on this, but Scope 3, another topic. Brian O'Kelly, launching this product initially.
Speaking of pivots, right?
Yeah, to decarbonize the advertising ecosystem, which we all thought, how long is that going to last before he pivots back into sort of classical ad tech? It seems like his latest pivots are moving into the ad verification, IASDV space. What do you see of that?
Agentic ad verification, right?
Yeah. Well, there may be a third pivot here, because I don't know if you saw today, there were layoffs at Scope 3.
Saw that, yeah. The sales team, right?
Yeah, and they want to go into agentic AI agentic media buying. So I think there's a path there where they're going to go into actually purchasing media based on the signal that they have.
Common agency.
Sure. I mean, I wish Brian all the best. We had worked with Scope 3 when they initially launched for decarbonization, and had them as a partner, as a signal coming into our system and as a reseller. And they obviously pivoted into other areas which were quasi-competitive. I think we will see where that ends up. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this current administration, anything carbon is going to be tough, right? That's for sure. Certain carbon intelligence, and it was interesting. I mean, I guess this is another pivot, and maybe they become an agency buying media. I don't know, but I do think like the one point they made though was interesting, Mark, is that like instead of like maybe there wasn't that much of a market for carbon intelligence or carbon accounting, right? But like there is a market. Like if you take a lot of the crap out, you mentioned this before, it does lead to better outcomes. And I think every impression is almost a gram of carbon generated. So if you're actually cutting out a lot of the AI generated crap, the garbage, and focusing on real outcomes and real performance, it should be better for the environment anyway.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like I think the one thing everyone can agree on is that efficiency is better. Right? More efficiency, more effectiveness, less spend, higher ROI. And I
fewer middlemen.
Fewer middlemen. Yeah. And I think, that obviously is our thesis too, which is if you can find quality cheaper that performs better, and we can show you that it performs, like that's hitting the three legs of the stool, which is quality, efficiency, and performance. Right. Yep. And I think that's what every advertiser wants, and that's good. And and the output of that is, economically positive and is environmentally positive. Those are great things that you can point to.
Yeah, and I love how you've just simplified it down to we had three tent poles, 3 pillars, and your entire business approach over the last 5 years has been moving down in those 3 buckets, really.
Yeah.
right? So looking ahead, and I'm sure you probably have to run in a little bit. Looking ahead, although I thought you said you had until 5 p.m.
I
Eastern.
did put a suit on just for you guys, right? That's what
we appreciate it.
You came out of a client call, or a client meeting. Somebody told me that. So looking at 3 years, what's your sort of bold prediction for verification, optimization, a unified sort of quality to outcome OS, which seems like you're really leaning into that theme, which seems critically important. Kind of a more federated ecosystem. What's your edge at DV, and what do you see the future?
Yeah, I think I think there won't be an engagement without all three of those components as part of it. Like verification and optimizing the cost of that verification are just going to be interlinked. You won't even have a discussion with the customer because, the idea of finding quality cheaper just makes sense. Like they're going to come together as one. And that third leg of the stool, which is actually proving the effectiveness of the performance, is just a no-brainer. So when I look at the business 3 years out, I see, a vast majority of our engagements, being across all three of those areas through an integrated solution, which we're building out right now, and we launched our first product, Authentic Advantage, which is our first optimization and verification solution together. I see all of those coming together into one platform. The one thing that we didn't talk about, and we could talk all day, is about the increasing rise of black box solutions, right?
Yeah.
Without transparency and without any assessment of quality, only assessment of performance. And I think what we want to be is the counter to that. Yeah. Which is we're gonna open the black box through transparency and verification. We're gonna show where you actually win, and we're gonna help you understand what worked and what didn't work, and we're gonna do that in a very independent way. Because I think advertisers love the simplicity of the black box, but everyone I talk to fears of what that actually means.